October 18th, 31 AD. The Temple of Apollo in Rome. Lucius Aelius Sejanus takes his seat in the Senate. He's smiling. He commands the Praetorian Guard. For years, he has run the empire from the shadows. Today, the game ends. A letter just arrived from Emperor Tiberius, hiding out on his island fortress of Capri. Sejanus is absolutely sure this piece of parchment hands him the final keys to Rome. He is about to become emperor in everything but the title. But the new captain of the night watch, Macro, begins to read the letter aloud. And the air in the room goes dead. The letter is painfully long. It wanders. Tiberius heaps praise on Sejanus, then suddenly rips into him. He drones on about mundane state business, then casually demands the arrest of Sejanus's closest allies. The senators smell blood. Very quietly, they start sliding their chairs away from the commander. Sejanus realizes the trap has snapped shut. He stands up. He needs to signal his elite bodyguards stationed right outside the doors. He needs them to draw swords and clear the room. But they aren't there. Just an hour ago, Macro quietly sent the Praetorians away. He replaced them with the city firemen. Sejanus is trapped. This was a man who built the deadliest security network in the ancient world. He packed the Praetorian Guard into one massive fortress. He controlled the mail. He controlled the military. He choked off every single path to the most powerful man on earth. He held a complete, brutal monopoly on violence. So how does the master of the secret police end up bleeding to death on a prison floor before the sun goes down? How does he die without a single soldier pulling a sword to save him? Because absolute power doesn't actually live with the men holding the spears. It lives entirely in the fragile illusion of who pays them. In 14 AD, the illusion died. Augustus Caesar had spent his life pretending Rome was still a republic. He ruled with a smile. His successor didn't bother. Tiberius was a hardened general. He hated politicians. He despised the Senate and their endless kissing up. He didn't want to manage massive egos. He wanted Rome to run like a military camp. And that opened the door for Lucius Aelius Sejanus. Sejanus wasn't born into elite Roman blood. He was from the business class. To the ancient aristocrats in the Senate, he was just a jumped-up middle manager, a nobody. But to an emperor like Tiberius, that lack of royal blood made him perfect. Without a noble pedigree, Sejanus could never legally claim the throne. He was a completely safe weapon. Sejanus didn't want the spotlight. He wanted the switches that turned the spotlight on. And in 15 AD, he got his hands on the biggest switch in Rome. He took command of the Praetorian Guard. Under Augustus, the guard was scattered across Italy. Keeping the soldiers separated made sure nobody looked like a military dictator. It was safe, but it was inefficient. Sejanus knew scattered soldiers are useless soldiers. He went to Tiberius with a pitch. Consolidate the guard. Build one massive fortress right outside the walls of Rome. He sold it as a logistical upgrade. Better discipline, faster response times. But the reality was a silent coup. Overnight, Sejanus parked 9,000 elite killers right at the Senate's throat. The Praetorian Guard went from a fancy security detail to a political hit squad. But swords are loud. To really control the empire, Sejanus needed a quiet weapon. He found it in the treason laws. Tiberius was paranoid. The old emperor's popular nephew had died, and his surviving family was a massive threat to the throne. Sejanus didn't send assassins in the dark. He sent lawyers. Rome didn't have public prosecutors. Any citizen could accuse anyone else of treason. If the target was found guilty, the accuser got a quarter of their cash. Sejanus turned paranoia into a business model. He didn't even have to sign death warrants. He just let rumors slip. He let the city know who was suddenly out of favor. Driven by sheer greed and blind terror, the rich elites tore each other to pieces. And the Senate stopped governing and became a terrified slaughterhouse. Through all the blood, Sejanus played the perfect servant. He never outshined his boss. During a dinner party in a seaside cave, the roof suddenly collapsed. Everyone ran, but not Sejanus. He threw himself over Tiberius. He took the falling rocks on his own back. He proved his loyalty with his own blood. It worked. Tiberius trusted him completely. And in 26 AD, sick of Rome and its toxic politics, the emperor packed up and moved to the island of Capri. He never came back. This was the killing stroke. Sejanus didn't overthrow the emperor. He just locked him in a golden cage. Sejanus became the only bridge between the ruler of the world and the world itself. He read the emperor's mail. He approved the boats sailing to the island. He decided exactly what Tiberius saw, heard, and believed. By the year 30, Sejanus had built a perfect machine. If you went against him, you went against the emperor. He was untouchable, or so he thought. By 27 AD, Sejanus had pulled off the ultimate magic trick. He completely controlled the emperor's reality. Tiberius was 130 miles away, locked up on the sheer cliffs of Capri. Back then, news only moved as fast as a horse could run. If you controlled the roads, you controlled the truth. Sejanus posted his heavily armed Praetorians all along the main highways and ports. He didn't outright ban people from visiting the emperor. He just set up security screenings. Senators, diplomats, and even the emperor's own family got stopped by polite men with swords. Their letters were taken, read, copied. Their travel permits were delayed forever. And Sejanus became the ultimate editor of the Roman Empire. When Tiberius looked toward Rome, he only saw what Sejanus wanted him to see. And Sejanus made sure the old man saw a city crawling with traitors. With Tiberius terrified of his own shadow, Sejanus moved in for the kill. He went after the imperial family. His main targets were Agrippina the Elder, the wildly popular widow of Rome's favorite general, and her 3 sons. Sejanus didn't use thugs in the street. That was too loud. It would spook the public. Instead, he used the quiet, crushing weight of the government. He planted spies inside Agrippina's house, slaves, tutors, even her closest friends. They listened to every angry rant, every frustrated whisper. Sejanus took those whispers, spun them into wild stories of a massive coup, and drip-fed the poison straight to Capri. In 29 AD, the paperwork finally killed. Tiberius sent a letter to the Senate screaming treason against Agrippina and her oldest boy Nero. The Senate was already packed with Sejanus's spies. They gladly signed off on the emperor's paranoia. Agrippina was dragged off to a barren rock in the ocean and left to starve. Nero was banished and quickly forced to kill himself. The next year, Sejanus grabbed the second son, Drusus. Again, no messy public execution, just cold paperwork. Drusus was declared an enemy of the state and thrown into a dungeon deep under the Palatine Hill. Sejanus just told the guards to stop bringing him food. Drusus slowly starved in the dark. In his final days, the boy was reduced to eating the stuffing out of his own mattress. It was a masterclass in quiet, clean murder. By the year 30, Sejanus had wiped out the royal bloodline. He broke the Senate. He was the indispensable savior of Rome. But right at the finish line, he made a fatal mistake. If you want to survive as the man behind the throne, you have to stay in the dark. You are the weapon. You are never the king. But Sejanus got drunk on his own success. He forgot that his power was completely borrowed. He stopped acting like a servant and started acting like the boss. He let the city throw public sacrifices for his birthday. He let them put up golden statues of him in the theaters and the military camps. Then he crossed the ultimate line. He forced the Roman Senate to swear their loyalty oaths not just to the emperor, but to the emperor and Sejanus. To the old money in Rome, the message was deafening. Sejanus wasn't pretending to be a humble guard anymore. He was building a dynasty. And that arrogance broke his entire machine. The secret police had worked because they were precise. The Senate let Agrippina burn because they thought they were safe. Keep your head down, do what you're told, and you live. That was the deal. But as Sejanus got greedy, he got paranoid. He started hunting senators who had absolutely nothing to do with the royal family. He went after Tiberius's oldest, most loyal friends. He wiped out anyone with their own money, their own influence, or a memory of Rome before he took over. The illusion of safety vanished. The rich and powerful woke up to a terrifying reality. Obeying the rules didn't save you anymore. Sejanus wasn't just killing threats. He was flattening the entire political world to build his own throne. For the surviving senators, the math changed overnight. Sitting quietly and doing nothing was now just as deadly as plotting a murder. By backing the most dangerous men in Rome into a corner with nothing left to lose, Sejanus did the one thing his police state was supposed to stop. He united his enemies, and deep in the shadows of the Palatine Hill, a desperate coalition began to form. It was led by the one person in Rome whose mail Sejanus didn't dare touch. The resistance didn't start in the Senate. It started behind the heavily guarded walls of the Palatine Hill. It was run by the one person in Rome whose mail the secret police were too terrified to touch. Antonia Minor. She was pure Roman royalty, daughter of Mark Antony, niece of Augustus, sister-in-law to Emperor Tiberius. Sejanus couldn't touch her. She was too famous to vanish in the night. She was too close to the emperor to frame for treason. She was the one blind spot in his massive spy network. By the summer of 31 AD, Antonia saw the writing on the wall. Sejanus was lining up a kill shot on her grandson, Caligula, the last male heir. Antonia didn't care about morality. She cared about blood and power. Sejanus was about to wipe out her family's future. But how do you stage a coup against a man who controls everything? You can't rally the troops. Sejanus owns the army. You can't talk to the Senate. The room is packed with spies. You can't even write to the emperor. Praetorian guards choke off the ports and read every letter. Antonia needed a ghost. She found one in a trusted servant named Pallas. Pallas wasn't a politician. He was invisible. Late that summer, he slipped out of Rome. Hidden in his clothes was a heavily documented letter detailing exactly what Sejanus was planning. Pallas dodged the checkpoints on the highways. He slipped past the guards at the docks, and he crossed the water to the cliffs of Capri. Tiberius broke the seal. He read the letter. He didn't panic. He was a combat veteran. He instantly saw the trap he was in. The blindfold was off. He was stuck on an island with a tiny bodyguard, and his supposedly loyal right-hand man had 9,000 elite killers parked right outside Rome. A weak king would have screamed for an arrest warrant. Tiberius knew that was suicide. If he ordered the Praetorians to arrest their own boss, they would just laugh and mutiny. Sejanus had paid those men for 16 years. A direct attack meant civil war. Tiberius had to defuse a bomb without tripping the wire, and he had to play a brutal mind game. He weaponized the mail. All through the autumn, bizarre, contradictory letters started flooding into Rome. One day Tiberius would praise Sejanus to the sky. He'd hint that ultimate power was just days away. The Senate would scramble to kiss Sejanus's ring. Then, 3 days later, another letter would arrive. This one would suddenly attack Sejanus's best friends. One week, Tiberius wrote that he was dying. The next week, he swore he was sailing back to Rome to inspect the army himself. It was a masterclass in paralysis. Tiberius was shattering the illusion that Sejanus was untouchable. The Roman elites got dizzy. They smelled a shift in the wind. Sejanus's allies started backing away. They canceled meetings. They delayed favors. And Sejanus was trapped in his own head. And if he launched a bloody military coup right now, he threw away 15 years of legal plotting. Why risk a civil war when the very next letter might just hand him the crown? Tiberius dangled the ultimate prize right in front of his face. It kept Sejanus anchored in Rome, docile, waiting. With Sejanus paralyzed by hope, Tiberius readied the knife. He quietly summoned a man named Macro to Capri. Macro ran the city firemen and the night watch. He was hungry, he was ruthless, and most importantly, he didn't answer to the Praetorian Guard. In a secret midnight meeting, Tiberius handed Macro a piece of paper. It made him the new, absolute commander of the Praetorians. Then, Tiberius handed him something else. A massive, rambling scroll. It was dictated by the emperor himself. The lethal letter. Tiberius didn't tell Macro to march into Rome and start swinging swords. He told him to use the government's own weight to crush Sejanus. Strip away the bodyguards. Lock him in the room. And let the terrified, selfish instincts of the Senate do the dirty work. On the night of October 17th, Macro slipped into Rome under the cover of darkness. The trap was set. Taking down a massive police state doesn't take months. It takes hours. It's all about cutting the target's throat before they even know they're in a fight. On the night of October 17th, Macro has no army. He just has a piece of paper with the emperor's seal. And he has a timeline measured in minutes. Before the sun comes up, Macro hunts down 2 men. He finds the commander of the city firemen, and he finds one of Rome's acting consuls. In the dead of night, Macro shows them the emperor's secret orders. With that single meeting, he locks down the 2 things he needs to break Sejanus: a legal official to gather the Senate, and a quiet security force to hold the doors. As dawn breaks, Sejanus arrives at the Temple of Apollo. He's carried in, surrounded by his elite bodyguard. He is absolutely untouchable. He thinks the Senate is meeting to hear a special letter from the emperor. Macro intercepts him right on the temple steps. This is the absolute edge of the knife. If Sejanus smells a rat, he just snaps his fingers. His guards will butcher Macro right there on the marble. But Macro plays him perfectly. He pulls Sejanus aside and whispers a lie. The letter from the emperor is here. It hands you supreme power. And Tiberius wants it to be a surprise. Blinded by 15 years of pure greed, and Sejanus swallows the bait. Thrilled, he waves off his bodyguards. He walks into the temple completely alone. The second those heavy bronze doors shut, Macro makes his move. He turns to the heavily armed Praetorians waiting outside. He flashes his new orders from the emperor. He is their new boss. And he gives them one single, brilliant command. Go back to camp. The emperor has a massive cash bonus waiting for you there. Looking at a legal order and a pile of gold, the deadliest killers in Rome turn around and march away. Instantly, the city firemen step out of the shadows. They surround the temple. The doors are sealed. Sejanus's total monopoly on violence is completely broken in under 10 minutes, and nobody even drew a sword. Inside, the jaws slam shut. That agonizingly long letter from the emperor is read aloud. It's pure psychological torture. It doesn't start with a scream. It starts with boring government trivia. It puts the room to sleep. Then, pages deep, it swerves. It demands the arrest of two of Sejanus's closest friends. The room freezes. Finally, at the very bottom of the scroll, Tiberius drops the hammer. He accuses Sejanus of treason. He orders the consul to arrest him. The illusion shatters instantly. Just an hour ago, these senators were climbing over each other to sit near Sejanus. Now, they physically scramble away. An empty ring of terror opens up around him. The consul stands up and points. "Sejanus, come here." Sejanus just sits there. For over a decade, he has been the voice of God in Rome. His brain literally cannot process the idea of taking an order. The consul has to call him 2 more times. He has to shout it before Sejanus finally realizes the horrible truth. He is the prey. He stands up. He looks desperately toward the doors for his elite guard. But when the heavy bronze swings open, there are no Praetorians, just a squad of lightly armed firemen. The fall is blindingly fast. By mid-morning, Sejanus is stripped of his robes. He is marched through the streets in chains. The public smells the blood. They hate the man who terrorized them. As he walks past, they rip his golden statues down to the cobblestones. They drag him into the deepest, blackest pit of the city prison. There is no trial. There is no defense. Before the sun goes down, the man who built the perfect police state is strangled to death in the dark. His body is thrown down the prison stairs to rot in the sun. But killing Sejanus was just the start of the nightmare. Because the bloody machine he built didn't die with him. The sun comes up, and Rome does what it always does. It survives. The exact same senators who swore their lives to Sejanus just weeks ago sprint to the Senate floor. They vote to wipe his existence from the earth. Stonemasons scatter across the empire, literally chiseling his name out of the marble. Mints melt his face off the coins. Then, the bloodbath starts. The men who spent years kissing his ring suddenly become his executioners. They butcher his allies just to wash the guilt off their own hands. They don't stop with the politicians. To make sure no one ever avenges his ghost, they drag Sejanus's children out and kill them. His ex-wife takes her own life. But right before she does, she sends one last letter to the island of Capri. It lays out every dark, hidden murder Sejanus ever committed. Tiberius reads it, and his mind finally breaks. The emperor sinks into a pitch-black paranoia and never comes back. And what about Macro, the hero who saved the emperor? He takes Sejanus's old job. He takes command of the Praetorian Guard. Within months, Macro is running the exact same playbook, the same spies, the same treason laws, the same thugs with swords. He just points them at his own enemies to secure his own throne. This is the brutal reality of absolute control. We want to believe history is a fight between good and evil. We want the tyrant to fall and the noble liberator to step up. But power doesn't have a conscience. It is nothing but leverage, fear, and violence. Sejanus wasn't a glitch in the Roman system. He was the system. He spent a decade building a flawless engine to crush human beings. He just forgot the one true rule of the machine. It doesn't care whose hand is on the lever.